Welcome, FMA Discussion. This is episode 442, and today we have Darcy Hardy on. And folks, we've had him on before. This episode is not really going to cover his bio. If you are interested in his bio, then you would want to go to episode 191, where we cover his bio more there, and you can find all the good stuff he's doing. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was more Bikini Terja. But again, episode 191, if you want to know more about him and his bio. And so today we're going to be covering more about the fusion of his wilderness training, martial art training, what is inspiration for getting into the wilderness. He's kind of living on the grid now, so we're going to speak about that. He's got some classes that kind of accomplish both some wilderness training as well as some martial arts training. So we're going to find all about that stuff. But I tell you what, I could have used this wilderness man. I was up in Calgary a little while ago, wrestling around with Sasquatch. Could have used this man. Kevin Goat there didn't know the man was 6'4", 240 pounds. Where was Darcy when you needed him? Could have used that man. But at any rate, here we go. Without further ado, Mr. Darcy. Hey.
Hey, what's going on, Dean? Thanks for having me over here.
Yeah, good. So I'm glad we're finally making this happen. So you're outside doing an interview. That's kind of neat. I have to say, I'm trying to think. I think you might be the first. I'm trying to think of. No. There were a couple. Okay. Maybe like one or two more, but yeah, most folks are doing them aside, which is kind of neat. So yeah, kind of you heard in the kind of beginning. We're not really going to cover your bio. Folks can go to episode 191 for that if they want to get some more on your background and all that. I'm sure we'll touch upon some stuff in here. But I think it'd be kind of neat. We're going to tap into your wilderness training and how you cross over to the martial art training, the fusion of both. What got you into the wilderness training? We did get a question from Badger, which we're going to ask and all that. So, so you're kind of really deep into this, and I know you touched upon a little in that first episode in there, but it seems like you've taken a deeper dive. So I guess what initially got you into the kind of the wilderness living?
Well, it's funny. It goes really far back, but it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago or so when I really had a chance to start to kind of apply more of what I'd been learning over the years. And it's funny, we in martial arts, we're constantly making fun of ninjutsu. It's kind of the tongue-in-cheek martial art because the bad rap it has.
Yeah, I think it's unfair a lot of times.
Yeah, most of the time. I mean, what we consider to be ninjutsu is often what is called Budo Taijutsu, which is the empty hand application of techniques, and they're usually techniques taken out of context. And as is most of the martial art of ninjutsu that we see, the new age Bujinkan and
Oh, he is frozen. Hopefully to unfreeze soon.
oh, you're frozen. I'm feeling fluid.
Huh? And you could still. I mean, am I still frozen to you?
Oh, you're good now.
Oh, okay. Because when I was waiting. Okay. Oh, that's odd. All right. Well,
Was I frozen?
it appeared it, but it could have just been me. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is pretty chilly out here.
So.
But yeah, so the idea of ninjutsu as I had learned it was from a man that was teaching from scrolls that he had read and studied himself, opposed to the curriculum of the Bujinkan. And most of what we see is based off the Bujinkan Budo Taijutsu that is shared by Hatsumi. And it is a lot of stuff that, again, taken totally out of context and is a very small amount of what ninjutsu was. Ninjutsu was generally these guys and women that were able to infiltrate different situations, whether it was as someone's gardener or someone's housemaid, to get either information or to change the circumstances of something so that the next step, which was the invading army, could then have this upper hand. And in
Interesting.
The Art of War, written by Sun Tzu, touches on this in chapter 13, the last chapter of the book. He talks about spies, and he talks about the use of spies and the different kinds of spies. And as much as he doesn't use the word ninjutsu, which is a relatively newer term, he talks about the jobs that were assigned later on to ninjas
Okay.
and shinobi. So he talks about this idea of gathering intel of where to land your boats, what the tides were like there, what kind of guards were placed in different types of environments. All these different elements that if you're an invading army, you would like to know. As we do today, we send in, if we're
Sure.
an invading, we always send in the spies first to gather intel, and then we send in the army. It doesn't make sense that we would just bomb the desert the whole time in the middle of the sand. So it's kind of an interesting thing in that the way, again, like the way we usually see it is very much guys in pajamas in a dojo doing a lot of kata with extremely strict parameters. Whereas when I was taught, it was in the woods. We would often run to the woods, gather plants, mushrooms, and trees, which I already had a background in herbal medicine. I went to school for herbal medicine in 2009, 2010. So that was a kind of an advantage that my teacher took advantage of, an attribute that he took advantage of, in that I knew a lot of the medicine that we were harvesting. So he didn't have to take time to explain to me the value of all these things that we're harvesting. I knew that if we used them to imbibe either as a tea or as a salve topically, we could train harder and not be as sore the next day. Is a huge advantage in that as you get older, it takes longer to heal.
Recovery.
And so, like, I'm 42, and I started this training in my early 30s, and I again had already been utilizing some herbal medicines in different capacities because of my training, but I hadn't been taking them in the context for the reasons that this teacher had shown me. So we would run through the woods. He would name off these different plants. I'd grab a bunch, put it in my jacket, put my coat, put it in my pouch. We'd get to the location in which we were going to train, which often changed. I'd get the teapot going, set up the pot of tea, and put in these different things accordingly to the cooking needs of them. So like some things like roots and different types of tree mushrooms have a harder, dense cell wall. So you add more heat to them in order to extract the medicine. And then other things like plants and the leaves of trees and the needles of trees require less heat. And in fact, too much heat will destroy a lot of the medicine within them. So then these medicines would go in later on in the tea. So this is, again, another lesson that is kind of woven into what I teach now, as well as it had been shared with me. And so while this was brewing, we would usually go over some sort of warm-up, and we'd go over some sort of lesson, and then we would spar. And that was kind of the formula. It was forms and techniques, drilling, and then application. And which, I mean, is from your own training, is a big part of what a lot of lessons are. It's how do I do that thing properly? How do I make sure that my correct? So I'm keeping myself safe, whether it's a knife, right? Or if it's a stick. And then how do I apply that with a bit of energy so that I'm moving to the right space? I'm figuring out the right distance, all the right timing. And then on top of that, now let's put a little bit harder energy onto it, a little more dynamic. And depending on the school, you may throw on some gloves and a mask, and then amp up that action. So to see, was I actually learning it correctly to begin with? What are some of the holes I might have in my game? And so then at some point during the lessons, take the teapot off, let it cool, add in the plant medicine or the tree medicine, because that's usually how we do it. We have two stages. So we have the decoction, which is the harder, hotter extraction. And we have what's called infusion, which is the kind of softer cooling application. So we put that stuff in after, let that sit for 20 minutes, half an hour. And then at the end of the lesson, we'd sit and drink tea and usually reflect on what we were working on. He'd ask me questions about, like, where did you fuck up? What hurt? What were you doing over and over again that created that pain in your body? What mistakes do you recognize that you were making? And then we would either walk or run back to wherever we were living at the time. And in that 2.5 hour, 3 hour period, there would be questions as well around what, stuff I was reading, stuff, audiobooks I was listening to and studying, and how that might tie into the lesson itself that we had that day. And that's how I was taught ninjutsu, which is like,
it's so interesting. Like if somebody just came off the cuff and just say like, hey, what do you think they train ninjutsu? Like I would be so far removed from the answer you just gave. It would be in a closed building. The blinds would be blacking out. There's no light. They're scaling walls. I mean, it would be so far removed from what you just described, which is kind of neat, actually. But hey, we get some folks saying, oh, let's just acknowledge these people. We got Phil from England. We got Eric O'Brien, Florida. Wayne Hunt, I believe also England. Terry Jobin, Stockton. Robert Small, I believe is, oh my gosh, Indiana, I believe. And Erica, take the wrong mushrooms and you might get some. And Rich Parsons, Michigan, and Dan, Pennsylvania. All right, guys, if you're watching, yes, tell us where you're watching from. But that's so interesting. Like I'm listening to you talk about this, and I'm seeing this whole dynamic that you're verbally explaining in this classroom setting that some, I guess, would view unorthodox in today's standards. And listening how the classroom is covering these multiple facets of education, like not just a martial arts, why the tea's going or the water's boiling, but but like reflection and all that. I mean, it's different. I mean, pleasantly different from the way you're explaining it. But I think it's fair to say, and not good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, obviously not the norm, I guess, per se, right? Not that matters.
Well, I mean, even something as simple as how do you make fire in the rain? So it's like we trained all seasons outside. This wasn't, just our summer sessions.
Yeah.
So we've got sleet, rain coming down. How do we set up a tarp over top of our shit so it doesn't get soaked while we're training? Where do we set up the tarp? How do we make the fire? How do we keep the fire going while this is going on? There's a very layered system of knowledge that's being shared, practiced, and kind of ingested, you could say, throughout these entire lessons.
Yeah. So wow. So through this, like you're taking up this martial art, and through the vehicle of this martial art, you're getting exposed to wilderness training, which further, I'm assuming, developed this further interest in course because of what you're doing now. So kind of like a 2-for-1, if you will. And that, I mean, I think it's just fascinating. So how, at what point did you, I guess, take a deeper dive where I don't want to say you completely removed the martial arts training, but where you specifically like just really dived into wilderness knowledge and training? I mean, did that occur consciously, or did you make a separate aspect of that in your tutelage?
Well, there was, this was the first year because I trained with Frank for about 4 years or so actively. And for the first year, we didn't live in the same location. So he lived about, I think it was about 18 kilometers away. And so I'd either run there or ride my bike there, or he would make his way over via bike or bus. And that changed at one point where we actually, because I lived in a house during all this, he lived in a teepee in the woods that he had made with a little wood stove in it and stuff, on an old paintball field, which was fucking dope to train in. Like it had buildings, it had old cars, like it was set up for games. So it was absolutely great for a lot of the stuff that we were doing. So I'd go, some weeks I'd go to his property. Some weeks he'd come to where I lived, and we would go into the mountains in Cumberland, which was about a 5-minute walk from the house that I was living in. And at some point, my roommate and I needed another roommate, and he actually moved into our basement suite.
Okay.
So
He's right there.
at that point, yeah, he was right there. So I'd go to work. I was working for Harmonic Arts, which is probably North America's largest herbal distributor. So I was the production manager, and I also ran their tincture lab, and I also did their R&D for new products, and I was their principal forager. So I was quite busy with that job. But then after work, I would come home and I'd have a series of lessons that we'd go through. So for 6 months after work, we would throw spikes. I'd come home from work, and before dinner, we would spend about an hour, hour and a half throwing spikes that we had made out of 9-inch nails, and worked on different techniques of throwing them. And then on the weekends would be full of our different levels of training, whether it was body conditioning or it was fighting applications. And then at some point, he moved back into the forest, into the mountains, which were a lot harder for me to get to on foot, but I would still go see him once a week. And during that week, I'd go to the woods by myself, and I would work on different wilderness applications of food, fire, water, and shelter and security. So these are the 5 pillars that I often teach in my classes. And so I'd go out with something in mind, like today I'm going to work on traps. And I'd go there, I'd set up a shelter, build a fire, and then I would make some traps and come up with the best ways to use the traps in the environment that I was in. And other days I'd go out there with a primary focus on making fire. So I would bring different fire modalities with me, whether it was flint and steel, ferrocerium and fatwood, and or a bow drill or plow method. And I would go through these different methods, and sometimes I would drop my stuff in the water, or I'd pour water on my gear and try to make fire, or I would start completely from scratch what was in the environment around me. And I would just go through these different lessons during the week after work. At one point, my roommate and I wouldn't allow ourselves to make dinner after work until we had gotten a fire with our bow drill kits. That was our lesson, our personal goal for that day. And both of us got fucking amazing at making bow drill fires. Like, I got it down to about 20 seconds that I could get a coal, even if it was snowing out, with my kit.
That's pretty incredible, because I've seen it. It's not easy. That's not like...
You're rubbing 2 sticks together.
I mean, that's that's pretty incredible. You're doing 20 seconds, man, under conditions. I mean, that's pretty.
And there's videos of that, like my older Instagram. If you go back in my kind of earlier days of Instagram, I didn't do a lot of talking. I didn't do all the lessons. I would just share a bit of what my training was at the time. You know, you'll see me swinging kettlebells barefoot in the snow, climbing chains instead of rope, doing a lot of different climbing exercises to get in and out of trees quickly, which are both, you know, great for evasion, but also amazing for getting food. You know, like there's apples and plums and pears and mushrooms that grow in trees. So being able to take an efficient way is quite handy. And for us here in the Pacific Northwest, we deal a lot with, bears, right? Like, black bears that climb a tree really, really fast. And there's an advantage of you being in a tree with a creature that can climb a tree, as it creates a bottlenose, right? So you now have this perfect space for an ambush, which I kind of mentioned yesterday briefly about learning lessons from the wilderness that apply directly to our martial world. I was watching a video the other day about a guy explaining escape and evasion techniques. And what he's describing for wilderness escape and evasion was literally how a mouse escapes and evades and moves through the wilderness. He was talking about moving from hard spots to open spots, hard spots to open spots, and each time stopping and using all 4 of his senses, or all 5 of his senses, to then check the environment before he moves through another open spot. It's literally what a mouse does if you ever watch its tracks. And so that's another one of those lessons, like I said, that we can pull from the environment around us, which is a big part of this 9th Shield program that I'm putting out, is taking the time to learn from the wilderness, taking the time to learn from the different creatures around us, have these protocols set in place over thousands of generations and whose lives depend on it, opposed to a lot of us who are just doing this as a weekend project.
Yeah, right. Or like some type of hobby and pass the time and what have you. I mean, like, yeah. Um, so you're not, but I mean, so you went from introduction through the martial arts lens, you got exposed to this, to where now you're actually embracing it as a lifestyle. Um, and so I guess keeping the martial separate, why don't you tell the folks about the lifestyle that you've chosen?
Well, it's it's funny. It's in a way they're separate, in a way they're the same. It's I often think of myself as a wild animal with clothes on. When my wife leaves for the weekend or for a week, I usually revert very much to the wild myself, wearing very little and spending a lot of time hunting or foraging late at night, doing a lot of stuff that is not accustomed for our human lifestyle. We make a joke that she is the only thing keeping me mildly domesticated.
Domestic.
This lifestyle of being more connected to the earth started to come up more and more as almost a prerequisite for my martial studies. In that the world around us that is wild has been doing so much of what we try to emulate for so much longer. Like I said, it does it through the lens of life and death. And so the more time I spent studying historical warriors from
Mm,
different cultures, whether it be North American, indigenous cultures, African, Asian, even European, there was often an emulation that they were trying to create of these different creatures. We make fun of guys who talk about being the lion and the sheepdog and da 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 da. These are jokes that often come up in martial arts now. But in fact, the times past, there was wolf clans, there was bear clans. The term
mm.
berserker means bear shirt. These were warriors who went into battle wearing a bear shirt as
I
their
bet.
armor,
Okay.
and there was all kinds of this emulation that we would see in the hunters dressing up in the skins of these different animals, and then going into the hunt, very similar to how these wild animals were hunting, because they were proficient in killing.
Okay.
And so the more I started to study this nature of these old warriors, I was seeing more and more of this. I was realizing, like I kind of mentioned yesterday with the blue heron, we start to see more and more of this emulation from these older cultures that we now have changed. And this is, of course, these are theories of mine. I'm just telling you my ideas. But I notice that our modern warrior, use that term loosely because it gets
Mm,
thrown around,
yeah.
um, lies on a heavy package of other people to look after them. They rely on a set of logistics that the warriors of old did not have. So, for instance, the samurai had around 18 skills that they were supposed to know in and out. Things like understanding the weather, understanding topography, understanding navigation, understanding fire, and foraging food. These were all parts of these 18 skill sets because they didn't have the logistics systems that our modern warriors have. Your modern soldier will go through a number of these courses to learn
Mm,
how to do different things. But from the people that I've trained in my life, my small amount of training with the military, they often have skill sets that are focused on firearms and focused on the use of these firearms at certain ranges in certain contexts. Whereas these warriors of old would have had to know their entire logistical program, including sewing their
yeah.
clothes. And so the more I started to look into these older systems of warriorship, I started to realize that as I live now, I have a grocery store I can go to. I have money that I can use to buy the food.
Mm,
I have clothes at a store that I can go buy. There's all kinds of elements looking after me and these logistics that are set up to look after me. And that's cool. I got no problem with that.
mm,
I definitely, there's a lot of things that we still buy from the grocery store. Like I don't make my own pasta noodles.
Mm.
But it got me thinking a lot about the totality of my study and the holes that I had in my study.
Okay.
And one of the questions that we talk about in our Ninth Shield program is, where are the holes in your martial path? What is your martial capacity end? Like,
Mm.
only applicable within a gym? Does it start to diminish when you're wearing regular clothes?
Mm.
Change when you put on shoes? Does your rucksack that you run with from time to time, does it change when it's not a solid block, but instead your food, your ammo, your sleep system, and all that stuff? Does it start moving? Are you used to that clinking noise? Do you know how to
Mm.
make it quiet? So it got me really thinking, like I said, my long-winded answer. It got me thinking when I started looking at these older warriors and their connection to the wilderness. So, like the indigenous warriors here in North America, they knew a lot of what was called bird language. So they could tell what type of alarm calls are saying what. So, for instance, birds will make a different noise if there's a cat, a dog, a person, a hawk, or an owl. Those are just 5 different voices of alarm.
Interesting.
And after training, you'll actually be able to discern the difference between those 5 alarm calls with a lot of ease. You won't have to give it a great bit of thought. You'll just hear the noise and you'll know, okay, there's a cat over there, there's a dog over there, there's a person and a dog over there.
Mm.
You understand the concentric rings of how these birds work, because there'll be a bird here, makes an alarm call. Another bird here repeats that alarm call. Another bird here repeats the alarm call. Bird here repeats the alarm call. So it comes out in these concentric rings.
Okay.
And this is a big part of our study, is how do concentric rings work? Because they don't just apply to bird language. They apply to all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can tell when you're in let's say, a martial arts class and you've got some dickhead who's really
Yeah.
annoying, who's disturbing the class's flow. Eventually, you'll see the instructor's flow get disrupted. And that's from the concentric ring from the original alarm call. And so in our study, we learn to see which bird is making which noise at what distance. So then we have an idea of where the alarm call originated. So we know at what distance are people either coming towards us so we can hide,
All right.
or what animal is
The
there that we
potential
can
threat. Okay. Okay.
exactly. And so all these things, like I said, when I talk about them being interwoven with our martial path, it's because we're taking out a lot of the logistics. I don't have unmanned operations above me telling me what's in front of me.
Yeah, satellites and this and that and overhead. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
So I have to learn that from the land. And
Yeah.
that's how my students are learning as well. They're learning it from the land directly, which in some ways gives us a bit of an advantage in that we don't run out of batteries. The birds
Yeah,
are
you're not
moving
relying on technology. I mean,
correct. And with this current day and age, not that me and you may have to face the reality of a collapse, but you look at any history book and you read about any civilization, and every
mhm.
single one has always collapsed. Every single one of them
I,
at some.
just the thought of it, I know with everything going on today, it's like I know. It's like what I know. It's scary. It's freaking scary. But I'm fascinated what you're talking. I mean, just that whole getting in touch with that. I mean, that's absolutely fascinating. You know, and like you said, now I'm starting to understand the tie to the martial arts training when as far as you going deeper into well, I mean, there's that connection. You know what I mean? Where you actually don't want to disconnect it. Or keep or make them separate. I guess as
Yeah.
far as studies are concerned. You know what I mean? And that. But so what was that? So it sounds like, in other words, I look at the overall adaptation that you're kind of speaking on, like, and that, and um, generally speaking, with your students, is it is an overall a struggle of adaptation, depending what in life they're coming from. You know what I mean? And I guess what I mean more specifically, if I got an inner city person coming in, the adaptation there. if I got somebody from rural. I mean, like, how do you, is that even a factor, like levels of adaptation for certain folks?
It's interesting because I think that it would be if I think it would be if our curriculum was set up differently. I think because our curriculum is set up for adaptation, that
Mm.
when we have a student, let's say Jonathan Pang, amazing martial artist, lives in Vancouver, really talented. He's got all kinds of amazing martial abilities, whether it be his KI studies or his Kung Fu studies, his Tai Chi. Great guy. Came and trained with us with our Crow Scout program last or a couple of years ago. And Crow Scouts is kind of like a green room for us. It's an introduction that we put out a couple times a year, brings in new blood. If they show the right qualities, then we can bring them into further studies.
Mm.
And so for Jonathan, he lives. Sorry, Jonathan, if I'm calling you out. Nothing but awesome, bro. I love you. Um, he's living in a very inner city life, and
Mm.
so we taught him a bit about the sit spot. Now, the sit spot is one of the ways. It's one of the tools that's used as an introduction to awareness, to building a bigger awareness outside of ourselves, which is a very hard thing to do in modern lifestyle of go 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 go
Mm.
goals and leapfrogging from goal to goal to goal to goal to the bigger goal. So the sit spot is something you do on a regular basis. You find a spot. This can be anywhere, whether it be the forest, whether it be the city, it could be a fucking industrial area. It could be anywhere. You have a sit spot. You go to that same spot as much as possible throughout a year so that you can observe the changes throughout seasons. In that time, you go there with usually some level of focus. Not a lot. It could be something really small. Like I often will send the students to do a sit spot. They're generally anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. And you go to that same spot, hopefully somewhere relatively close to where you live. It could even be in a park.
Mm.
And you observe the regularities. You observe, let's say you look for one bird, like the towhee. You look for the towhee, and the towhee is a very common bird in this environment in which you see in almost every space, whether it be directly in the trees, in the forest, in the meadow area, the transition zone between the forest and the meadow area, and you'll often even see it in the urban areas. And so you watch that creature throughout the seasons. You won't see a lot of it in the summer, but you'll see a bit of it in the summer. Kind of hides out a
Mm.
bit more in the summer. And you observe how it changes throughout the seasons. How its call changes. So literally, its voice sounds that it makes are different between the summer and the winter. You start to notice a difference in its body language throughout the seasons. You start to notice its hunting changes throughout the seasons.
Mm.
And so the sit spot teaches you to be more aware of these changes within your environment. And again, this is something that can be done in any space. You could be in Manhattan, you could
Yeah,
be
right,
in
right, okay.
Vancouver,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be birds. These could be people.
You can
This
just
guy
watch people.
he goes through the park every day at 8:45 with a bagel in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. Now I watch how he walks.
Right.
I watch him walk throughout every season. I see him only for 30 seconds because he walks in front of me through the park, but I watch how his foot hits the ground. I watch the posture of his body. I watch
Mm.
if he's on the phone. I watch all these details. Is he walking with somebody? He comes through with this guy he works with every week. How does he talk to this guy every week? What are the changes in their conversation? What are their
Mm.
conversations reflecting in their lives? And so this study of awareness then builds this foundation for a huge set of other attributes and skills, like fucking huge. Because if you can do that every day for 20 minutes to an hour, when it comes time to be more aware of, let's say, the difference between a mushroom's gills that are running down the cap and ones that terminated the cap, that tiny little difference could kill you. But if you are aware of that detail, it can keep you fed in the woods. And that's, again, one of those small details that students in my study eventually start to learn more and more of.
Wow.
And because they have a strong foundation of awareness, that these aren't such big problems for them to wrap their head around because they've already developed these high and very acute attention to detail skills.
Yeah, right, right. Wow, wow, wow. Fascinating, fascinating. Oh, the question just came. Okay, let me just see if it fits. If you were in a situation where you had to use all your survival skills and was stranded. Okay, here's the question from Phil. If you were in a situation where you had to use all your survival skills and was stranded, what would you have on you and what would you eat and hunt for?
Good question. But the problem is that I can give you a long-winded answer that might not actually answer it. More specifically, where am I stranded? What
Let's go with
environment?
this. You're stranded in you got dropped off in North Dakota, mountainous area, North Dakota. With the let's go with that.
And what do I have? Do I have the gear I usually have with
You
me
have
in my?
some gear with you, right? You got some
Okay,
gear with you, but you're not fully packed. Let's
all
go with
right,
that.
all right. And how long am I there for?
You got dropped off, and I'm telling you, I'm coming back in 3 days for you.
And so I am not evading, but I'm just hanging out.
I'm dropping you off, and I'm saying, hey, Darcy, man, I'm gonna come back in 3 days, get you at this exact spot. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's easy. Yeah, yeah. See, it all changes once you're evading,
Yeah,
and
you
if
know,
you're evading,
I definitely more context, but yeah, but
yeah.
um,
Okay, so with that context, what I'm gonna first do, and what season is it?
you know what? Let's go with fall.
Okay, so it's fall. I fucking love fall. It's my favorite season. So I'm not evading. It's fall. I have my EDC, which usually holds more gear than most people own in their entire gear bin. So I've got a knife. I've got my probably have 5 different levels of blade with me. I've got more than likely my multi-tool, which has a saw, which has pliers, which has a number of other manipulation tools. I've got a number of different modalities of fire. I probably have 2 lighters. I probably have a lens. More than likely, have at least 2 ferrocerium rods along with strikers.
Oh my
And
God! So you're basically saying you're all set.
this is how we all are within our study of the ninth shields. I don't have a single student that doesn't carry an EDC with them everywhere that
Yeah.
would crush most people's bug out
Okay,
bags.
let's make it a little more challenging for you.
Yeah, yeah. Give me something hard to
Okay,
contact.
you got one EDC, you have one fire making application, no bedding, right, an EDC, one fire modality, um, and let's go with that. Let's go with that.
All right, all right. So, first things first. It's in the fall.
Yeah.
So what I'm probably and I'm not hiding. So I'm probably gonna make my fire. The fire is good for a number of things.
Okay.
Being that I don't have a headlamp with me, and I don't have any fat with me to create a fat lamp, I'm
Yeah.
going to want light as this, depending on what time of day I got dropped off in. But I'm assuming it's going to take me at least a few hours to make a nice bed and a nice shelter. And it's the fall. I have to consider there could be rain. There could be some sort of weather change that would cause me to
Mm.
not be able to. So first thing I would do is fire. So very first thing, let's say I'm in the mountains, I would probably drop elevation a bit, and I would set up a marker so that I could come back to that exact spot where you dropped me off. And then as I dropped elevation, I would make a defined trail because again, I'm not hiding from anybody, so I don't have to cover
Correct.
my. So I'd make a defined trail so it'd be easy in 3 days for me to get back to that exact defined spot. So you weren't looking around for me as I'm walking down, dropping elevation. The reason why I'm dropping elevation is because there's going to be more firewood, and there's going to be more animals, and there's going to be more food, which is going to make my survival a lot easier. So as I'm dropping down elevation, I'm going to be harvesting different things to make my tea, things that I might want to eat, things I might want to use as a type of bait for whatever traps I set up, and bits of material I might see along the way that'll be nice for my shelter. I usually have cordage with me, but let's pretend I don't. So I'd keep an eye out for certain trees that I could then strip bark from to make cordage or dig up roots to split to make cordage as I'm walking.
Mm.
I'd be filling my pockets because I'm assuming I don't have a backpack. As I'm walking down, I'd be gathering, keeping an eye out for game trails as well. So I'd be tracking the ground, listening to the bird language, getting an idea of what else is in my area. I finally find a spot that would probably be, if it was in the fall, I'd probably be looking at southeasterly facing. So that way I have the majority of the sun hitting my camp. Again, I'm not hiding, so I can be in direct sunlight.
Gotcha.
Now, this is going to be perfect to help to keep me not only warm throughout the day, but also to dry out whatever shelter I make. Because if you have a damp, cold shelter, forget about how it makes you feel. It's also going to bring in lots of creatures. Lots of bugs are going to come in your shelter. It's going to cause you a lot of problems. So let's say I have a northwest facing shelter. I'm going to get a lot less sunlight, and I'm also going to have a problem.
Okay.
So as I'm walking down, I'm collecting, foraging, observing, listening, smelling, filling my pockets with everything I need. I get to that spot. It's nice and southeasterly facing. Now I'm going to look for something to set up my ridgepole. More than likely, I'm only there for 3 days. I'm not going to build a lean-to with a raised bed. I mean, I might, depending on what kind of gear, what kind of stuff I found along the way. It's hard to go anywhere in our environment without finding man-made objects. I've been deep in the woods and found things like axes and machetes. I've been deep in the woods and found people's battery packs and cell phones. So there is always usually stuff that I can find. But I'm going to assume I don't find any of that stuff. So what I end up doing is I'm going to find either a stump, a downed tree, or a number of trees that I can then fashion to create my debris shelter. Okay. Now, the advantage of a debris shelter, if anybody's ever gotten into Tom Brown or John Young, they talk a lot about debris huts. The advantage of the debris hut is that you create what's called dead air space. And dead air space works on the same principle as a wetsuit. So your wetsuit, generally, not your dry suit, your wetsuit isn't waterproof. It absorbs a bunch of water into tiny little membranes. Your body heats up the membranes. Those membranes then reflect the heat back to you, and that gives you a layer from keeping you really cold when you're out surfing or whatever the fuck you're doing in the woods or in the water. So it works on the same principle of dead air space, which is what I'm going to create within my debris hut. Okay. Which is basically it's almost like a long triangle kind of stretched out. And it's got a ridgepole held up by some sort of support. Now, it depends on my EDC. I'm guessing it's probably what I have with me most of the time, which is one of my Mora knives, they're full tang knives, so I can use them to do some batoning. Batoning is a method in which I put my knife against the object I want to cut. I get a piece of wood, and I hit the piece of wood onto the knife on the back of it, and it chops through like an axe without actually having the weight of an axe that you would normally have. So then I use that, depending on what kind of wood is in that environment. I'm guessing there's a lot of pine there. Pine's relatively soft. It's a soft wood. So that's probably what I'm going to be working mostly with because it's not going to damage my blade. Even though I'm only there for 3 days, I don't want to fuck up my knife. And I either, depending if I find a stump or not, to build my ridgepole off of. If I don't, I'm going to take 2 Y sticks, post those together like this, and I'm going to put my ridgepole down the middle. And that's going to give me the support for my ridgepole. And then I'm going to take a bunch of other branches that are straight, as ones that preferably don't have a bunch of hard twigs sticking off of them. If they do, I'll shave them all down. I'm going to put those along my ridgepole down to the bottom. And then from there, I'm going to build more ribs going lengthwise down the side of that, creating a really strong lattice work. Again, trying to make sure I don't have too many bits of sticks sticking up, because each one of those sticks that's sticking up, if it rains, will create a capillary action where the water will run down that stick and run right into the
Okay.
Now, I have to consider it's in the fall, so there may be rain. There may be heavy dew. I don't know. I haven't been north, but I have to consider these things. So when I build the top of my shelter, I'm not going to want it to be very wide. In fact, it's going to be a bit more narrow. And it's going to be very small. Like, this is not something you can sit up in. This is something you have to wiggle your body into, because I want to create a dead air space. Now, once I've created this apex and this lattice work, then I'm going to take a bunch of more sticks. I'm going to put them in widthwise to create an even more square space inside. So it's not going to be like this inside. It's going to be more like this with another space right here. Then I'm going to go around. If it's fall, I'm hoping that there's a lot of debris. Another reason why I came down the mountain, down towards the valley, down towards a space that still has a lot of sunshine, but gives me more of a plethora of wilderness stuff to work with. I'm going to take the leaves if there's leaves. I'm going to take needles if there's needles, and I'm going to pile them on top of this debris shelter. Literally like I'm not even kidding. Like I'm gonna pile them to like 2 feet to 3 feet thick, and I'm gonna make it really conical at the top, and then I'm gonna stuff the inside. I'm gonna just pack it full as much as I can. And while I'm doing that, I should actually back up. One step I did skip is before I put the lattice work on, I'm going to dig out the middle in like a trough, and I'm going to fill that trough with branches going into a crisscross with the skinnier part of the branch coming down. That would hug my body and to hold my body and give me a bit of like insulation from the ground. Because a lot of your cold that you feel when you sleep on the ground doesn't come from air going around you. It actually comes from your body trying to heat the earth below you. So I'm going to create a level of insulation, packing that space full of material that's dry, the driest stuff I can find. Then I'm going to build my lattice work. Then I'm going to load the top. Now, once I've done that, that original space I was talking about, that little triangle that's in the top there, the kind of like little A-frame space, I'm going to pack that full of material. So there's not really a lot of space in there other than for my body to get into. And in doing so, what's going to happen is this thing, if I build it right, it's not only going to be dry, but it'll never get colder than my body. So my body heat will help to keep the space warm. And it will never get warmer than my body. So I won't overheat and get sweaty and then freeze. Right. Well, this is one of the advantages of the debris hut. Now, once I've built all this, I'm probably going to build a door. Now, this door I might not use all the time, but there'll be, if in case there's a wind that starts coming up from a direction that was new to my plan, like a really nasty cold wind, I'm going to have a door that I've built for that. So remember those roots that I picked up that I've now split to make cordage? I'm going to use those to help to fashion my door so I can actually have a structure I can pull across to give me some of that wind shelter. After that, I'm going to build a fire trough. It's going to be in a U shape. So it's going to be in like a horseshoe shape. It's going to go about 1 step length from my front door. So about 1 meter from my front door. There's going to be a trough that's going to be about 1 foot wide all the way around. And then I'm going to build a fire reflector that's mirroring that same shape. That's going to be about 2.5 feet to 3 feet tall off the ground. And what's going to happen is I'm going to build the front of that with the fire reflector with logs. I'm going to put rocks along the inside of that fire reflector. And on the back of it, I'm going to put a shit ton of dirt and rocks. So what I'm doing now is I'm creating thermal mass in my fire reflector. So when I heat up that fire reflector from having my fire in front of it, it's going to absorb a bunch of that heat. And then throughout the night, it's going to release a lot of that heat, creating that thermal mass property, which is actually going to help to keep me a little bit more warm in my shelter and keep some of that wind off of me. Then I'll probably build what's called a galley pole. The galley pole is 2 Y sticks with a ridge pole in the middle. Okay, and this is my cook area. And so once I've got that set up and I've got my fire trough, I'm going to then take a piece of my fire trough and I'm going to dig it out, probably to the right-hand side because I'm right-handed, into almost like a bell shape. And then what that's going to be is once I've got a good fire going, I'm going to use that bell shape to pull coals from my main fire into it so I can use that primarily for cooking. Because you don't want to cook on flames. You can, people do, but it's an inconsistent fire, which means you'll get an inconsistent cook.
Gotcha.
So if I'm working directly with coals and I'm constantly replenishing that little space with coals, I'll get more consistent heat so I can cook whatever it is I've got more consistently, a lot easier without burning it. Now, this is my immediate setup. Once I've got this set up, it's probably going to be time for bed because this is going to take me a good portion of the day. So hopefully I've found a little bit of stuff to forage on to keep me from getting the hunger pains. If I didn't find a lot of stuff to forage on, there's a number of different plants that you can find that are high in tannins. These plants, if eaten in a very small quantity, things like salal leaf, will actually help. The tannins will shrink and slow the production of digestion in your stomach, which means you get less hunger pains. Now, it can be ignored. You're not dying. But the problem with the average person is it'll start to get to the mind. Because we're so used to being fed and full, it can get your attention onto that instead of other things you need to be paying attention to. So again, I'd have a pile of those with me just in case I didn't find anything that day on that walk down from the hill. I would ingest some of that stuff, just swallowing the juices, chewing up the leaf, spitting out the material, and that would help to slow my stomach juices down, which will allow me to get a better night's sleep without waking up hungry. Now, it's really important you have a good night's sleep because you know what it's like. Your motor skills go, all kinds of things
Yeah.
slept. If I'm working with a knife, there's a chance I could hurt myself with some dumb injury simply because I hadn't slept well.
Right. Right.
The next day I wake up with the sun as early as I can. I imagine I have some sort of clothing with me. I might even have a shemagh because I usually have my shemagh with me, or I have a bandana. Let's say I don't have a container, right? I don't have a water bottle. I don't have a cup. I don't have a pot. I'm going to take my shemagh or my shirt, whatever's cleanest, depending on the weather, of course, because I might not want to take my shirt off if it's cold. And I'm going to go to wherever the most greenage is in my walkable area. So if there's some grasses, some wild grasses available, I'll go there. If there's trees with big leaves, big open leaves, like here we have a lot of maple, I'll go there. I'm going to take my shemagh and I'm going to drape it over top of this. In doing so, this cotton material is going to soak up a bunch of that water. I'm going to wring that off into my mouth. So that way I stay hydrated first thing in the morning. And I'm going to do that for probably half an hour. And in that time, in half an hour, I'm going to be able to get 3 or 4 cups of water. Now, your body can only process around 500 mils of water every 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be a rush in doing this because otherwise I'm just going to be wasting my energy and wasting water. So I'll take my time to make sure I get those 3 cups. Now I've got my water. I've had a good sleep. I've got my shelter set up. I've got my cook set up. Now it's to make a number of different hunting tools. So first thing I'll do is probably make a spear. I'm going to fire harden the tip of it. As I shape it, I'm going to use a rock to squish in all that resin that's coming out as I fire harden it. So now I have a strong point for killing. Once I've got that made, depending on what I have with me, I might make a bolo. So I might take 3 strands of some sort of cordage I have with me, tie those to something hard like rocks. So I have 3 rocks to throw and catch. If I don't have that, I'm going to fashion a rabbit stick. So something that's heavier, probably about the length of my arm, heavier on one end the other. That I'll spend 15 minutes practicing and zeroing it in so my body's used to its weight and to its shape so I can use smashing. If I don't have that available, I may make what's called a throwing star. It's basically just 2 sticks that I tie together with roots, sharpen on the ends, and it's very much like a rabbit stick. I'll use that again as a projectile with some impact. And then I'm going to rope. I'm going to look in the valley wherever the water is, being that most creatures are going to go to where the water is. And I'm going to track the entire way there. I'm going to be looking for trail sign, whether it's from the grasses that have been chewed from different animals, which I can tell if it was a rabbit chewing or a deer chewing based on the type of marks that are on the greenage. I'm going to be looking at the browse line, so I'll get an idea how big the creatures are in that area that are browsing on greenage. So I know if there's a lot of deer in the area or it's just full of rabbits and squirrels. And as I'm going down towards wherever the water is, I'm going to be moving what we call a fox walk. So I'm going to be landing with the ball of my foot, rolling it to the side, rolling it to the back. Ball of my foot, rolling it to the side, rolling it to the back. In doing so, I'll have the sensation in whatever shoes I'm wearing of if I'm going to step on something, it's going to break and make a large crack. This in turn is going to allow me to move through the environment a lot more quietly without setting off bird alarms, which could scare off whatever it is I'm planning on killing to eat. In doing so, I'm going to be using all my senses at the same time. I'll be listening to the bird language. I'll be smelling constantly. As I'm moving from place to place, I'll stop once in a while and just smell and just listen and see if there's anything in the environment that I'm not used to. Again, being I haven't been to North Dakota. And again, keeping an eye out for people, even though I'm not evading, I know that if there's a guy over there walking his dog, if I wait quietly, there's a good chance if anything's in the environment that's small and is scared, it will run from him towards me and will give me the chance. Especially when things are scared, they don't pay attention, so they'll just dart in one direction. I almost had a rabbit run into my leg the other night in the pitch dark. It was running from my wife, and it didn't see me there because I was moving quietly. So as I'm moving down towards the watering hole, because all animals need water, and if there's a stream, a creek, or a river, more than likely I'm going to run into creatures there. And once I get there, I'm going to look for tracks. And there's more than likely, I'm probably going to find 5 or 6 different animals whose tracks are there. depending on what I feel like processing and killing that day, I will then track whatever animal it is. So let's say it's a raccoon. I have only got 3 days. I don't need a shit ton of meat. I don't need a whole bunch of food.
Right.
It may be a creature that I then track until I can find it and then kill it. Or I might get down there, let's say it's a river, and I find freshwater mussels. So instead, it's an easy harvest for 3 days, no problem. I really only need 3 main meals of protein for those days, maybe 4. I'll go harvest a bunch of mussels, take those back to camp, cook those up. And there's a number of different modalities in which I could cook those to make them not just palatable, but enjoyable, depending on what other herbs, plants, and stuff. So there's a lot to it, right? And these are like what I'm explaining now is stuff that most people don't know to tell you.
No, that's incredible. I mean, just the way, like, I mean, wow, that is. I'm almost thinking like bring you back on, and it would be neat actually. You got me thinking, like bringing you on and you actually just demonstrating some of this stuff. You know what I mean? If you wanted to, I'm not saying like something that's going to take you hours. I guess something more on the less time consuming, simpler aspects of what you do. But if that's ever of interest, let me know. I think the folks would get a kick at it. I know I would.
Yeah, I'd be totally down. The location that we're moving to, I'm not sure what the internet. It's a bit more in the woods than we already are. So I'm not sure what the internet will be.
Yeah. I mean, when it happens, if you
definitely be down.
Yeah, I mean, because you're going there relatively soon, right? I mean,
tomorrow,
right. That's why we had to bang this. Okay.
But nevertheless, we could figure something out. Maybe it would be somebody with data on their phone is with me. I can set up a Wi-Fi.
I just think it would just be really neat, like folks actually seeing what you go through there. I think it'd be a great skill for folks to see and learn, even if it was just simple, some of the different methods of fire starting. You know what I mean? Like for starts, you know what I mean? Like, God, you got stranded somewhere. At least you know how to make a freaking fire. You know what I mean? That's something you might,
It depends on what kind of like survival situation you're in, but for the majority of them, people are lost, and so they want to be found. So having a strong set around fire is huge.
Yeah, I think that'd be fascinating if you're willing to do it. I think folks would really enjoy that, getting like actual real life skills. You know what I mean? All right, because I got like I got time. Okay, so let's do this. So you now, I mean, obviously you fused the two and all that, but now you're actually teaching with this fusion of both martial way and wilderness way. What can you tell us on that?
Like I said before, it goes hand in hand. It's hard for me, even in the city, not to be teaching plant medicine. There's some videos I've posted on my Instagram where we're doing something very martially, and I'm like, fuck, look at that plant, blah blah, it's good for this thing, that thing, this thing, that thing, this is how you use it. This is, like I mentioned briefly, we study philosophy as well. So like my students, I push them to be avid readers and not novels. I teach them to read these old war manuscripts, and I teach them to read different philosophical manuscripts. I teach them to think philosophically. So ask yourself questions and be honest. One question is, like I mentioned it briefly, what is your martial capacity? Like where does
that
it end?
Alone I found fascinating. Like, not to cut you off, that was such a fascinating point you brought up. Like, okay, I'm out of the gym. We're like, how much did it go down? All right. Yeah. I'm in a parka. How much did it go down? You know what I mean? It's good. I mean, it's awesome.
Just put on a parka in the rain and throw some 1-2s and just see how your body reacts differently. Yeah. How much water your punches will get. It's like any of that, you can notice that. And it's, it's the same thing with like one of my students, he routinely will come to class wearing jeans. He's a bouncer, and so he wears the clothes he bounces in.
Yeah.
And he's a purple belt in BJJ, and So we run through a lot of grappling with them with our knives, because it's mostly what we do is weapon based, in the sense that there's always something, whether it's a chunk of glass, a broken crack pipe, a rock. There's always something near you that can change your ability to
The
win.
whole, yeah. I mean,
And so it's like, yeah, learning to,
mm,
ask yourself these questions and be okay with failure. Be
yeah.
okay with having weaknesses.
Oh my
So
God, embrace it.
that's it. Because how can you get better if you don't know where you
You
suck?
won't. True success comes from failure, right? If you don't embrace failures, man, I don't
Exactly.
know.
And one of my teachers, he used to always say to me, lose every day. And,
Yeah,
it means find something you're not good at, be okay with it, and find a way to overcome that loss. And so that first question I mentioned, what is your martial capacity? Be honest. Like,
I
okay, like
loved it.
what?
No, I thought it was. I mean, one of the things I do, my main major is anything against knife. I've never really shared this a lot because it keeps me grounded. Because of the failures. It keeps me freaking grounded and not even remotely thinking anything. Like it keeps me grounded. And but it kind of correlates to what you're saying. Like, what's your weaknesses? Find them, embrace them, and work from them. And I find that grounding effect. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's huge. That's why I say, like, the Ninth Shield program is designed to never be complete. It's not like a complete martial art. We're working towards incompleteness. We're constantly looking forward to finding things we suck at so we can get better at them.
I like that.
Like,
Like you're not looking, okay, I'm almost to ninth and I'm going to complete this. No, we're going to give you more excuses so you never complete. I think that right there is so interesting. Like that, like no completion, like no
and
end. Yeah,
if you're honest with
loving it.
yourself, there's so many variables. It's like, can I do this technique when I have the flu? Like, what is it like to hold a stick when I'm shit and and someone's coming after me? Like, I just recently did so one of the things we do is we do these things called shark tanks.
Yeah.
I used
Okay.
to work kickboxing, and that was something we always did before our fights.
Yeah.
I fought when I was younger, and we would shark tank each other like crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
recently, we got into, I guess it was last year, we started shark tanking each other on our birthdays. So whatever your age is, you do a minute for whatever, like however many years. So I turned 42 last month. No, sorry, earlier this month I turned 42. So I did 42 minutes. I did 42 rounds, let's say.
That's
And it
freaking.
ended up being around, by the time we were done, because there wasn't any breaks, but we would take, because so part of the Shark Tank is that people get to choose what rules of engagement and what the
Okay.
fight is.
Okay.
So some of my competitors have backgrounds in Kyokushin. So Kyokushin, no headshots, everything else goes. One of my students, or a guy that I was scrapping with, wants to go double stick, and I have one stick left-handed, or I start on the ground, or like there's just like they get to create the perimeters
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what
Absolutely. Okay.
I have to agree. And the whole thing, like I said, it took about an hour and 15 minutes. I've got it's all videoed, so I'm gonna put an edit out in the next probably couple of
That's
weeks.
freaking incredible. 42 rounds in 1 minute, man. That's
Oh,
no easy feat.
bro, it's crazy.
I'm like, I'm
It's
I'm I'm 58, and somebody said, okay, you gotta do 58 1 minute rounds. I'm like, okay, I hope you got.
well, we're gonna probably top it at 30 for most people, but because I'm one of the seniors, so to speak,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna keep it going as long as I can at whatever age I'm at, just to hold
yeah,
the bar really high for the youth. And
sure,
so this was at one of our gatherings. We do our tribe has three main gatherings a year. We have one that's a 1 week long gathering,
okay,
and then we have two 4 day gatherings in which skills are shared. We eat together. It's mostly in the woods.
nice,
Um, there's workshops, two workshop blocks a day with the chance of training or learning 15 different instructors for each block. So you
which
can
is
learn a lot
incredible.
times. So this was one of the days we did the Shark Tank, and it was really amazing because I had gone into it planning on focusing on my conditioning is really good.
Yeah.
But focusing on making it through the rounds and thinking a lot more defensively opposed to offensively, which was a great lesson for me because a huge chunk of my defense is my offense. Like I've fought in the Dog Brothers, I've fought with Dog Brothers outside of the Dog Brothers, and the way I'm able to survive, like I'm only 5'9", 155 pounds. Like I'm not a big guy, and most of these guys are a lot bigger than me. And like Loki's a fucking animal who I train with regularly, and stick fight with him regularly. So one of the ways I'm able to stay not smashed is I have the ability to smash. Now, during these 42 rounds, I was trying to match my opponent's ability because not everybody there is a good decent fighter, and at the same time focus a lot more on my defense, which means I was trying to work a lot of my blocks opposed to smashing to make them scared to come in. And in doing so, I got fucked right up like more than once. And it was awesome because
especially against seasoned full Dog Brothers, man, you're going to get hit.
Oh, without a doubt, right?
You're going to get hit. And I mean, like I play with the Boston crew, New York crew, and you're going to get hit.
There's one here in February 14th, and I am counting the fucking days. Like the last one I went to was in March, and it was one of the absolute pinnacles of my life.
Yeah, it's just, I just wish I was young. I mean, it's just, I mean, he's, but I tell you though, I've had him on a bunch of times. I will continue to bring it on because I have absolute nothing but profound respect. Yeah. And I just love those guys. They're just some of the most down to earth human beings collectively in a martial arts thing I ever been around. It's just like, just like guys regular guys you talk to and just, but tough son of guns, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Great. And really great people. Like after the fight to one of their guys' places and had a fucking taco party and talked, politics and history and philosophy.
They're not dummies, man. These are some smart dudes, man. You know what I mean? Like well versed in different areas and like in great conversations, depending on what your interest is, and you know what I mean. That they just don't talk about like hitting over the head with a stick.
No, not at all. It's I was honestly, like I said, I am counting the days for the next one here in Vancouver.
Yeah, I tell you, like I want to get with someone. Like they're just. I can honestly say, man, some of the most profound respect I have for people in the community, FMA discussion, this podcast, et cetera, are the Dog Brothers.
Yeah,
because they're just real.
It
is. You know what I mean?
And
what you see is what you get. They're not, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm so tired of these facades and I know I'm digressing here, but.
No. I'm with you on it. That's one of the things I love about the Dog Brother mentality is you dump the tank. You know what I mean? Like you dump the tank. So
they'll make you dump it.
There's no like that was one thing. Like, so when I used to fight MMA, I was fighting pre-regulatory body here in British Columbia. And so we often didn't even have proper weight classes. We didn't do blood tests.
Yeah, you're good. Just go with this guy.
I loved it. It was like, it made so much more sense to me coming from my background of fighting so much on the street growing up.
Yeah.
I've been stabbed, slashed, cut in the face, bottled, stabbed. I've got scars, and going into Dog Brothers to me was such a beautiful experience, being that I see a moment to headbutt. I don't have to think about the fucking rules. I'm going to headbutt. I see a moment where I can smash with an elbow. I can clinch a knee. I'm just going to do it. I don't have to, there's no second where I have to think to myself, I can't do this. Right. Which really I find extremely difficult, like really hard to hold that back. And so the guys that I spar with on Wednesday, we open up each other pretty hard. Like I fought in the Dog Brothers in March, and then the next weekend, me and Loki had our usual weekly class. And one of the first things he says to me, he's like, so you guys, your Wednesday class, you guys fight pretty hard, hey? And I was like, why? What do you say? Why do you say that? And he says, you seem pretty relaxed at the gathering. I was like, wow. It's like, it wasn't that much different. The guys, were better than some of the guys I spar with on Wednesday, but we don't change. The parameters aren't much different, except we're in a parking.
Yeah.
You know, we're not in a gym on a nice like hardwood floor. We're in a parking lot covered in broken crackhead glass because of the neighborhood that we train in. So there's less groundwork, but we still throw each other down the pavement. We still kick, knee, headbutt, stab. People bring out the fake knife mid-fight. There's still a lot of that open parameter for play.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, it just makes more sense. I mean, you know, Bruce Lee was talking about that. He was talking about having that like ability to really release your inside. Your what's the terminology used? But he was talking about not having anything hold you back, but having that really like full reflection of your art
Mm.
being exchanged with another person who's doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, which I absolutely fucking love with Dog Brothers, and I really deeply appreciate that space that's been created, that container that's been created, in which you guys get there. You want to fight as hard as I want to fight. We're going to go full fucking tilt. Nobody's holding anything back other than like stomping someone's head when they're on the ground. I'm still going to kick. You fall to the ground, I'm going to fucking smash your legs with this stick. If I get the chance, I'm going to ram my knee into your head over and over again. You know, it's like having that like understanding, that firm understanding right from the get-go. It creates this type of container that creates an energy that had me and Loki singing old 80s punk tunes on the drive back to the island. Like it creates this like absolute beautiful.
Oh, wait, were they the Misfits?
Oh yeah, there was a bunch. We had like even like the Dead Kennedys. We had the Dead Kennedys.
I saw them.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Well, now we're really gonna digress. You're gonna really bring down a rabbit hole here, like Misfits, Dead Kennedys.
So all this encompasses. This is what I'm talking about with the Ninth Shield. The Ninth Shield is bringing in this type of energy that is like you talked earlier about the difference between somebody who is in the wilderness, somebody who's in the city. When given the right tools, they will find the wild spots everywhere. Because even in the city, if you want to observe where the animals go every morning, you will find the space in which they get their resources met every morning. And you
right. They have to go somewhere, right? I mean, jeez.
And there's always animals somewhere to watch. Like I was doing flooring at one point years ago, like putting in that snap together flooring. I was doing it on an industrial level. So I was going into these buildings, 20-story buildings. And on the 10th floor, if I looked, I would find mouse footprints in the dust left over from the drywallers in the corners of the wall, exactly how they move around to stay hidden.
Wow.
As long as I was aware. And
so right. As long as you would know what to look for or whatever.
It's impossible not to see the wild everywhere, as long as you know what to look for. And that's one of the things we teach in the Ninth Shield is this level of observation. You can tie the natural world into the wild side wherever you are. It can be any country. I mean, like I said, you could be in Thailand. You could be anywhere, any of these countries that I've gone to. I've been able to find the wild spots anywhere where I am training and observe these things in nature that I then get to learn from. That's why the Ninth Shield is tying in all these elements.
All this thing from from your wilderness element and study into the martial way, and now you're getting this, seems like this wonderful fusion.
It is. It's energy of both. Each one supports the other one. It's like if I'm in the woods, let's say apocalypse scenario, we have this crumbling of society.
The economy, the dollar crashes, everything. Boom.
Yeah, there's no more clean water. We've been EMP'd by China or wherever. We've got a major problem on our hands. You now are forced to operate in a system without the logistics that you normally have. So now you have to learn how to fight with your backpack on. That's huge. Putting on your backpack and throwing a 1-2, that's just that in itself.
You're able to do, I can see that, right?
Oh yeah, learning how to have these straps of your backpack not used against you like a judo gi.
Yeah.
Working on your grip breaks, he's grabbed it, learning how to break that off, getting his hand to bring him in close.
Yeah.
Like learning how to use your gear to your advantage. Badger asked a question around the axe and the tomahawk.
You know what? We're almost running out. Yeah. You know what? Let's jump in there. And basically, his question was, which I have written down here, is, okay. Can you mesh basically axe combats, hatchet combat. Can you mesh that in your current wilderness training?
Totally. So yeah, like we talked earlier, I train a lot of P Kitty. That's kind of my focus these days. I'm also looking at a bit of everything else. Like I flip through YouTube. I go to whatever seminar I can. Went to a really good one on Krabi Karbong recently. I studied Krabi Karbong in Thailand 2 years in a row with Crew O. So I have that as a background. I train a bit of KI with a number of guys as well. And this length of stick, the reason why I got into this wasn't necessarily because I appreciated FMA at the time as much as I do now. It was because this is a common length of shit you find lying around. I can find a branch that is the length of my arm, that's straight in almost any environment. I go to another country, and for $3 to $5, I can find a machete almost anywhere.
Yeah, right. Especially like Latin America, depending where you're going.
Totally. Because originally when I started training with Frank, we did everything with our katanas. So everything was full-handed. And, you know, I appreciate that deeply. But where the fuck am I going to find a katana in the world outside of a specialty shop? Whereas this was something, again, the way, like, you know, that question that I asked earlier, what is your martial capacity? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is dope. For sure, I can cut and stab and slash and do all the things. But then where do I get that? This I can find anywhere. So it got me thinking more along those lines. Now, Loki, he's trained P. Kitty for years and has a lot of the system under his belt that a number of the other Tuhans don't display for whatever reason. I don't know. One of the things he brought up a couple of years ago was the baton method. So not the baston, because this is the baston. This is the baton. And so learning how to use this is very similar to in Japanese martial arts, we have a thing called a hanbo. And a hanbo is your bow that has been broken in half. So it's a roughly 2.5, 3 foot section of wood.
Okay.
So you use it very much like this. You learn to hit. You learn to lock. And you learn to hit more of like a ballistic style. And thrust and smash. That's not much different than my axe or my hatchet. This is my tomahawk. Not much different. I hit, I slash, I slash. I have my full length draw here, where I throw my ones and my twos.
Yeah.
I have my medium length, ones and my twos. I choke up on it for closer range. My ones and my twos, my threes and my fours. My thrust, not any different.
Correct.
I had in my hand. I can block. Here's my box blocks, right? Here's my angles for my 4 walls from P. Kitty.
Yeah, right.
Now I have this butt end to smash with. I have this slashing end. I have this hooking end for hooking limbs, hooking the head. I add in my knife, my tomahawk. I now have a spot. This is no different. I slash, I thrust, I cut, I move in, I catch and thrust, I hook and I slash, I hook and I drop and I pull. I come in closer. I now have my punching, here, slash, cut, hit. My mid-range, same thing. My long range, same thing.
Right.
And it's the same.
It is. I tell you, the axe, tomahawk. It is the the overall aspect of translation from it. You have a blunt, the blunt translation. You got the thrusting mechanism. You got a slashing mechanism. I mean, when you look at it from overall, as far as a weapon, it's pretty encompassing. You know what I mean? It's pretty awesome.
Oh, these are great tools. This one in particular, the Trailhawk like steel, and I just made a new sheath and handle for it.
Nice.
But these are fucking phenomenal tools. I've made shelters, skinned animals, done all kinds of shit with them.
Yeah, it's kind of like 3-in-1. You know what I mean? As far as the
and if
applications.
like downward strikes, being able to use this surface-based block that we can't normally do with a stick.
Yeah.
This is one of the drills. We do a lot of drilling with and sparring as well with these by Cold Steel.
Aren't those like such a great? I picked up a couple of them. And they were so reasonable too, and in price.
Like 15.
It's like Jesus. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah. Then these are great to spar with. I mean, you got your gloves and your mask. You can play a lot of games with these. You get used to that
hooking mechanism. Yeah.
And it's the same idea. It's like I can use my four walls from my P Kitty.
Gotcha.
Come in closer for my deeper attacks. But yeah, wonderful tools. And I feel like just learning to use these different edges and angles, like I said, being able to block a number 1 angle, number 2 angle with that, these horizontal strikes, and being able to get in close and hook, gripping, using this thrust, flashing. And this translates to this.
The hammer, absolutely.
No different. There's my long range, medium range, close range.
There you go. Yeah, really. I mean, exactly.
And that's it. It's the same thing. So it's like learning these principles of weapon use is a big part of what I teach in my 9th Shield, because the guys aren't just studying. We're not just studying the knife. Although a lot of what I share online in my videos, a lot of it's knife work.
Knife driven. Yeah.
It's a big mix. You know, we do a lot of spear, we do hatchet, we do axe, we do shield and stick, we do machetes, whether they're plastic or aluminum. We mix all that stuff together because it's about adaptability. And it's like, what do we have available? You know, we add in firearms, we add in everything you could think of, collapsible weapons like shirts and gis, ropes, chains.
Flexible, yeah. Sounds like you got something incredible fusion going out there, and the folks that are around you are participating students. It sounds like they're very, very lucky to have you. I mean, you know what I mean? Just what you're exposing them to and stuff. I mean, just not just the martial art, but the wilderness stuff is I find fascinating, and of course the marriage between the two, where you get to really taking. As far as insight, like again, what you mentioned earlier, as far as like, okay, where are your limitations now? You know what I mean? And all that. Like that's like that right there is like worthy of thought. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm in my, I got these heavy boots on, I got this coat on, and I'm carrying something here, and you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, we do a Kingago every year, which is a winter training.
Okay.
It's 9 days long, and it's 9 hours a day that you're training, and it's all done outside. So you're dealing with the cold and you're dealing with the wet. Now, all that stuff that we did in the summer, how does it feel to do it with your heavy winter gear on? How does it feel to do it when you're wet?
Yeah.
You haven't slept.
And you're freezing.
Oh yeah, it changes everything. Dexterity. How's that change?
Oh, when your fingertip.
Again, what is your martial capacity? Knowing where your limits lie. And
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Where are the holes in your ship? And I tell people because they get pissy sometimes, not my students, but guys online. And it's like, why are you getting pissy? Like ask yourself, what is it that I'm getting? Why is this feeling annoying?
It's a reflection on themselves. It's not you.
That's right.
You.
Look into it. Why is it that you're feeling that way? Ask yourself.
Yeah.
What is it in myself that is making me feel offended? Why am I feeling offended? Go deeper. Is it something from your childhood? Is it something that that you're inadequate of? Is it something
That's it. So it's either just be dismissive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Think about
it. Go into it. Look into it.
I mean, you got me thinking like about this stuff, because you know what it is it's really on the flip side of the coin. It's complacency. You're taking it for granted. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'll be in my athletic gear and I'll sprint if I need to, and if I don't, I mean, I'll have quick shift and turns because I'll be in my.
I'll have my friends with me. I'll call the cops.
Yeah, I'll have my cell phone, and my car is right over there. And,
no, like it's good to play those like mental scenarios of like to find where your holes are, what would I do then? You know, and having someone that you can be honest with to riff with
Mm.
is really good
That's
exchange.
another thing too, right? Having be able to somebody that could just like be right, honesty. That's a whole
Huge.
other
And so like
juggernaut.
that's one like being like the way we train our Wednesday sessions
Yeah,
is I'll have a framework of what I want to share, and then I'll talk to the youth and I'll talk to their people in our group. What are some things you've been finding online lately that you want to go over?
right.
What are some, because we all train different arts as well. So like I've
Sure.
got students who are training BJJ, they're doing judo, some do karate, some do kickboxing, some do, I even got some guys that do Sistema. And it's like, okay, what is it that you are finding holes in within those systems that you think that we
Mm.
can develop
Yeah,
from?
right. You guys can all get together and problem solve. I mean, isn't that like, come on, I can't think of a better setting than that, where different folks from different disciplines are getting together and kind of overall problem solving and that. I don't know. I think what you're doing is awesome. I really do, and I want to bring it back on in
Well, yeah,
conjunction with whatever we did finish today. But I think it would be awesome for you to do some of these mini instructionals again. Maybe start with freaking starting a fire and how to do it, depending on what you have or don't have. You know what I mean, or what you should maybe carry just around with you in an event you end up in a situation like this. You know, but I guess
do
we
have
see how your internet is. You know.
I do have some online videos for my online program.
Yeah.
Um,
So, you know what? If you can, because what I could do is I could put in the comment section. So, where's your online stuff?
oh, it's
Is it YouTube or?
no, it's on I've got a program. Do you know who Chris Mandigma is?
I sure do.
Yeah, so Chris has got Tertia Tactical,
Yeah.
and he's got a number of different kind of online courses that you can purchase on there. I'm just gonna send it to you right now.
Yeah. If you send it
And
to me, I could then I could put it in the comment section like right now, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
he has a thing set up on there called the Five Pillars of Survival.
5 pillars
And
of survival. Okay.
yeah, Five Pillars of Survival is a chunk. It's not all of it, but it's a good chunk of what I teach um, that people can purchase for. I think it's like $20 a month. And you get like however many videos a month
Okay.
that you can learn from. And
How are you
then
sending it to me? Are you sending it via Messenger?
yeah, yeah, I just gotta find it on here. Um, but it's yeah, it's one of those things that it's good to have just kind of like online. You can look it up and be like, okay, I've
Yeah,
got
absolutely.
um, where the heck is it? Yeah, lately I've been focused on, been working with a number of different indigenous bands here on the island. That's been a big focus of mine. Um, but it's been really good.
I'm a fan of the some I'm part native from Maine, so
Oh yeah,
mm.
what's your tribe?
Starts with I don't know. It's upper New Hampshire, Maine. Oh my God, I always forget the name, but that's kind of where, as far as the research I did, kind of goes up there. But I'm gonna have to get you the name. It escapes me. But yeah,
That'd be cool,
my
man.
father was roughly like around 25% or something.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, learning that kind of heritage I find is can be really empowering. Um, my family's uh, my family's from mostly from Ireland. We're the McGillies.
The
Uh,
Gillies.
the McGillies. Yeah, yeah, Darcy McGilly. It doesn't get any more Irish than that.
I'm telling you, that's funny.
Right? Okay, so I just found it. Here, I'm gonna send
All right,
you
here
the
we
file.
go. The Abenaki, ABA.
Ah,
That's okay.
Abenaki. That sounds familiar.
That's what everybody kind of has been. Yeah. All right. So okay,
Okay, that to you.
you're sent. I got it. So what I'm gonna do here is now I'm going to copy. and I'm going to put it right now in the comment section here. Okay, should be coming up. So, folks,
Awesome.
if you see this, which should be popping up anytime now, and it just did. Perfect. Okay, yeah. All right, so there, folks. Last entry in the comment section. You guys, this is where you guys can check this out right here. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, do this. Please do this. When you get moved and settled, let me know how the connection is.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be great to bring you back and again, and just, yeah, I can kind of, in other words, I'm kind of doing this as a whole already, as far as the interviews where folks come on, they'll basically just demonstrate, showcase something of their curriculum. It could be anything, you know what I mean? But I think it'd be kind of neat for you to do that. Maybe you could show like maybe a weapon piece, and in addition to showing the weapon piece, maybe you show how to start a fire.
Totally. Yeah. Well, we show the weapon, and how do you make fire with it?
Or bingo, there you go. Like, I mean, in fact, like I'm bringing a couple guys. Like one guy's gonna show stuff from Dos Paris. I'm kind of segueing into this, particularly for folks who've already been on, where now they can come back. They'll just show what they do, and who knows? You might get students, you might get interest. I mean, based on what you show in that, like Danny Terrell did it on some Sagitas. He was the first one, so I'm going to start really trying to go in that direction. So yeah, the best thing to do is when you get out there, just touch base with me as far as your internet. But we could certainly do that. We can, like those two things right there, creating a weapon for fire. You know what I mean? And starting.
What episode was that with Danny Terrell that he did the same?
That was very recent. I'm going to tell you like right now, literally maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago. Hold on, I'm popping it up now.
Yeah, I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, it was very recent.
One of the things I love about P. Kitty Tersha is, as much as we have a base kind of curriculum, each instructor shows kind of a slight variation of whatever it is, which, coming from a Japanese background, that made me fucking crazy at first to see those variations. Now I deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, now you deeply appreciate it. Okay, here's his episode. So episode 439.
Wow.
So again, he just came on and just did demos, but I really want to go down that path, particularly again for folks who've already been on, where your bio's been covered. So you might as well tap into like showcasing what you do. And again, who knows, you might get interest in students and so forth. You know what I mean? So yeah. Cool. But hey, man, it's been a pleasure. I got to get my kids, but so yeah, please, when you get out there, let me know how the internet is, and let's set that up.
Yeah, sounds great, Dean. Thanks again for having me on, and I really appreciate you being back online doing what you're doing.
No, thank you. Yeah, the break was nice. I kind of missed it, and came back, kind of recharged and re-energized and different outlook, and so it was definitely worth the time to be away. But at the same time, I am glad to be back. And you were one of the folks that reached out, which I really appreciate, and hence is why you're on. So, which I, but hey, man, I hope you continue what you're doing. I love it. I think it's great. And I really want to get you back on. So hopefully your internet, wherever you're going, is going to be up to speed. So
yeah, I'll definitely keep in the loop.
All right, Wilderness Man. I could have used you, man, some time ago. That Kevin Go. I didn't know they were going to put me in Sasquatch, All right, brother. You take care.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Be good. All right, folks. That wraps up episode 442. Who is next? Friday night. Badger and Guru Errol coming on talking about why they created their own systems. So check that out. That's going to be Friday night. I'm going to assume around the 7 o'clock area, I assume. But yeah, definitely check out Darcy's stuff there, man. Sounds pretty interesting. So, all right, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.